welcome back to session 2 of this module, where we'll be covering the topic of attracting and incentivizing early talents and employees. During your founding journey, you'll quickly notice that around half of your time will be spent hiring. Yes, you heard that right. Not just building, not just fundraising, but hiring. It might not be what you expected when you started, but it's true. Getting the right people on board is one of the most important things you'll do. So let's walk through some of the key principles around how to hire, who to hire, where to hire, and how to think about employee compensation, especially in the early days. But first, you'd likely need to change your mentality on 2 things. First off, hiring shouldn't just be about who's available or who looks impressive on paper. It should be similar to how you approach finding product market fit. You don't just build features because they seem cool. You build based on real gaps or needs. Same goes for hiring. Start by identifying what your team is missing, what's holding you back from your next milestone, or what skills or responsibilities are not covered by the current team. Now, once that's clear, go find the right person, and not just any person, but we'll get into that a bit later. There's a common trap, especially in early stage startups, and that is thinking that hiring automatically means progress. It might impress investors or signal growth on the outside, but the reality is, more people doesn't always mean better outcomes. What really matters is how effective your team is, not how big it is. If you can hit your goals with fewer people, but maybe a bit more grind, then that's often the smarter move. And remember, bringing in contractors early on is a valid way to get things done without overcommitting budget or long-term resources. Now, let's consider a real example. Hayden Adams, founder of Uniswap, one of the most prominent DEXs in the world. He launched Uniswap v0 by writing the initial contracts himself, and with support from advisors, friends, contractors, and obviously a ton of networking and grinding. It wasn't until the launch of a more refined V1 that he began expanding the team. Today, even as Uniswap leads the industry in TVL, Uniswap Labs employs just over 200 people, a surprisingly lean operation, especially when compared to other projects of similar scale. This underscores one key point. You don't need a large team to build something impactful. Now that we have the right mindset, let's shift gears to the first key point, how to hire. Before you can convince anyone else to join your vision, you have to fully believe in it yourself. Especially when speaking to a top talent, people can tell when a founder isn't 100% sold on their own mission. These folks have seen a lot of pitches, so if you're not all in, they won't be either. Early on, most of the candidates won't be actively job hunting, as their emails are probably littered with job offers. So, you'll need to reach out directly. And when you do, pitch your project like you're talking to an investor. Talk about things like, how fast are you moving? What's the roadmap look like? What kind of impact can this person have? This isn't just about getting them excited. It's also a way to get aligned on vision and direction from day one. And most importantly speaking, talk about what's in it for them. What's the challenge, the impact, and the upside. Early team members should feel like builders, not just hires. You want people who aren't just in it for the paycheck, but are excited to help create something meaningful. That doesn't mean that they need to live and breathe the project 24/7, but they should be open to going the extra mile, whether that's longer hours, uncertainty, or wearing multiple hats. And it also definitely helps if they genuinely enjoy their craft. For example, engineers who love to code, or designers who obsess over UX. This is because in a startup environment, challenges comes fast. And for them, obstacles are not roadblocks, they're puzzles worth solving. Now that's not to say compensation isn't a factor. It is. But those who truly believe in your project's future will view equity or token compensation as part of the long-term reward, and definitely align themselves accordingly. Here's a practical tip. How you hire should depend on how well you understand the role. When hiring for roles outside of your area of expertise, say legal or compliance, invest in someone senior. They'll set standards and help guide you through unfamiliar territory. For example, if you're a technical founder hiring a legal officer, a more experienced candidate can definitely clarify what excellence looks like in that role. On the other hand, when hiring areas where you have strong experience, like product or engineering, you can afford to take a chance on a promising newcomer. These individuals may lack a polished resume, but they can make up for it with commitment and the hunger to learn. The key is balance. Balancing seniority where you lack insight and ambition where you have the experience to guide and mentor. Now, here comes one of the most asked questions of all. What if you meet someone perfect, but they come from a big company and expect a higher salary? This is where your pitch really comes into play. Present your startup as a challenge worth taking on, an opportunity to help build something foundational from the ground up. Now, this can be very compelling to someone who's looking to break out of a traditional corporate trajectory and create real impact. But with that said, just keep in mind that not every corporate all-star thrives in early stage chaos. For example, a BD lead from a big firm with a 50-people team might be great at scaling, but might not be the right person to chase after your first 10 clients. Therefore, you should always assess fit, not just resume. In the early days, your first hires are almost like co-founders who have yet to grow into their leadership positions. So it makes sense to start with your personal network. If you're fresh out of school, look to friends, clubs, and communities with shared interests. If you've worked before, consider past colleagues or people you've collaborated with. These folks already share some common ground with you, and that trust can go a long way. From there, you can branch out to events, local startup communities, or niche Web3 gatherings. Actually, on that note, I'd like to give a big shout out to some of our closest friends here in North America that have helped us facilitate events in the past. Local Web3 communities like Offchain Global or Orbis 86 are great places to find potentially like-minded builders who are willing to join you. And most importantly, never ever underestimate the value of simply sitting down for coffee with someone who might potentially be a good fit. Now, let's talk about compensation. Most early stage Web3 startups don't have big budgets, and that's normal. What matters is aligning on key incentives. Some candidates may prefer a steady salary, while others may want upside through equity or tokens. A typical early stage package includes a base salary, equity, and token allocations. The base salary is there to manage short-term needs and reduce risk. Then equity and token represent long-term ownership and belief in the project's future. Talking about the base salary, there are two common ways to calculate base pay. The first is to base it on living expenses. This has become more relevant post-pandemic, with so many people working remotely across different geographies. The second is to base it on prior salary, especially when hiring from bigger companies. In those cases, offering 50 to 70% of their previous salary in fiat and topping up the rest with equity or tokens is pretty standard. In the end, it's about matching what the candidates value most and making sure that you're both betting on the same long-term outcome. All right, to wrap it up, hiring isn't just about filling seats. It's about finding believers, people who can build with you, bleed with you, and grow with you. So, take your time and be intentional. And remember, the hire at the right time can make all of the difference.